Amriteshwari Namaha. Very good morning, everyone. My name is Ashwati. I'm a faculty associate at Amrita Darshana, International Center for Spiritual Studies, Amrita Vishwavidyapitham, Amrita University. I, on behalf of Amrita Darshana, welcome all of you to this invited lecture series as a part of Mahabharata Upanayanam, the online course under Amrita Ahead, Amrita University. Let's begin the session by invoking the blessings of the Divine Mother. Dhyayamo dharavati tejo naishtiki snigdha pankavilokini bhagavati mandasmita shrimukhi vatsalyamritavarshini sumadhuram sankirtanalapini shyamangi madhusikta suktam Amritanandatmika Ishwari. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. Om Amriteshwari. I once again welcome all of you to the session. Draupadi is one of the central characters of Mahabharata. The Mahabharata portrays Draupadi as the strongest female character. This lecture is an attempt to put forth some lesser-known facts and some unexplored aspects of this famous character from Mahabharata. It also aims at the analysis of Draupadi's role in the narrative in the light of perspective of Dharma in the epic, that is Dharmanayika Draupadi. I consider it my privilege to welcome Dr. Gauri Moghe, Assistant Editor, Mahabharata Cultural Index, Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune. She is also the coordinator of BORI Digital Initiatives. She is also a visiting faculty, Department of Sanskrit and Prakrit Languages, SP Pune University. She has worked as a linguist for the project of IIT Powai. She has a PhD in Sanskrit, Tantra Shastra, Bijas in Durga Saptashati, a study from SP Pune University. She has presented many research papers to national and international seminars, has given several lectures on Mahabharata, Vedic literature, Tantra literature, and Shakta cult. Her research areas are Tantra Shastra, Mahabharata, Sankita Shastra. I welcome Dr. Gauri to the session. Over to you, Gauri, ma'am.
Namaskar. Thank you so much, Ashwati, for this warm welcome. And let me check with the screen share option first, and then I will start. So before I begin this lecture, I would like to thank you all for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk on my favorite topic like Draupadi and Mahabharata. And at the outset, I would just like to mention that today, whatever I'm going to speak, every reference or every point that will be based on the critical edition of Mahabharata. I'm sure all of you are aware of the critical edition of Mahabharata prepared by Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. I would like to say that for more than 48 years, people were working on the same project. And when it comes to the textual study of Mahabharata, it is globally renowned, the critical edition of Mahabharata. And there is a long process, and actually we can have a separate session how the critical edition was made and prepared and what are the significance and what is the importance of critical edition. But today, just I would like to mention this, that I'm going to speak on Draupadi, and the lecture is based on the references from critical edition of Mahabharata. Okay, so let me begin. Narayanam namaskruthya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim chaiva tato jayam udirayet. I have just recited the benedictory verse of Mahabharata, which says that I offer my humble oblation to the Lord Narayana, the Nara, and Devi Saraswati, and now the Mahabharata is going to be discussed. According to the tradition of Mahabharata, whenever a person listens to or reads or studies this text of Mahabharata, he should start his reading or listening with this verse. So as per the tradition, I have recited the benedictory verse. And today, as I said, I'm going to discuss some significant facets of the character of Draupadi. Draupadi, one of the most celebrated characters, I would say, of the great epic of Mahabharata. We know Draupadi as a daughter of Drupada, princess of Panchala, and that is why she is called Panchali, wife of Pandavas, Kulavadhu, daughter-in-law of Kurus, the queen of the kingdom of Pandavas, mother of 5 sons, and Sakhi of Lord Krishna. But when I see the character of Draupadi in Mahabharata, the text of Mahabharata, and after examining many such references to the character of Draupadi and all the incidents, I just see her as the Dharmanayika. And that is why the title of today's lecture is Dharmanayika Draupadi. So I was talking about the title of today's talk, that is Dharmanayika Draupadi. And I just said why I am calling Draupadi as Dharmanayika. It will be explained gradually in today's talk. So before we discuss the characteristics of character of Draupadi, let us begin with the Mahabharata epic and its prayojana, the motivation. And then you can understand that why I am calling the character like Draupadi as Dharmanayika, and why Dharma is so much important in the text of Mahabharata. And when it comes to all the main characters of Mahabharata, Dharma is always very pertinent and inseparable part of all these characters and the narrative. So let us begin with the epic and its prayojan, the motivation. Why this great epic of 1 lakh verses? It is said to be of 1 lakh verses, and that is why it is called Shatasahasri. So why this text of 1 lakh verses of Mahabharata was composed? What does come to your mind when you hear the word Mahabharata? The story, the itihasa, the battle, the philosophical dialogues, various characters, maybe good, bad, or some of them are gray, heroes and anti-heroes, the teachings, the preachings, politics, geographical details, rituals, behavioral patterns, right, wrong, struggle of truth, untruth, satya, asatya, vara and shapa, boons and curses, deities, demons, mythological beings, humans, birds, reptiles, nagas, etc., etc., and the list goes on. But why all this is being told in the one text named Mahabharata? What is that one thread which holds all these facets together and reveals the chain of these interwoven subjects and objects? I think we can find the answer in the text of Mahabharata. And why I'm saying this, I think as I'm reading this text since a few years, whenever you're posed with a question, many times you find answer only in that text. So the text of Mahabharata will provide many answers to your many questions. And let us try to find some answers to some questions regarding Draupadi. Anyways, so let us see the prayojana of the epic. Prayojana means purpose or motive. And it is said, Prayojanam anudishya mandopina pravartate. Even a dumb person does not act without a purpose. So obviously, an illustrious composer like Vyasa had a motive to compose Mahabharata. Let us now see what is the prayojana or purpose of the text of the war narrative of Mahabharata. To understand this, let us look at an episode in Adi Parvan, the first Parvan of Mahabharata, and the episode is named Bharavataranam, that is unburdening the earth, which is the prayojana of the main narrative. We can say so. Because if we consider the war narrative to be central theme of Mahabharata, we can say that Bharavatarana is the prayojana of the main narrative. There is a section of Bharavatarana which reveals the purpose of the origin and the war of Kauravas and Pandavas. As you all know, Janamejaya asks Vaishampayana in the very beginning of Mahabharata. The episode narrates that there is a dialogue between Janamejaya and Vaishampayana, and Mahabharata begins with Vaisampayana Uvaca, what today's lecture series is called. So when Janamejaya asks Vaishampayana, for what purpose were all godlike warriors born on the earth? And I'm sure even we often come across such questions, that why this war happened and why, how many, there are so many great warriors at the same time, they fought against each other. So same question was asked by Janamejaya, and Vaishampayana told him, when everything was going well, there is a story, and he says, when everything was going well and in accordance with law on the earth, everything was going with accordance with dharma, the asuras, that is the demons, they were born on the earth. The asuras were, however, often defeated by the gods, and having fallen from the heaven after their defeat, the asuras took birth on the earth. They were born in the forms of all creatures that live on earth: cows, horses, asses, elephants, etc. Some of those demons were born as kings, and they were supremely mighty. They caused a great amount of adharma on the earth, and the Prithvi or earth was heavily burdened by their evil acts. Therefore, Prithvi sought refuge with Lord Brahma. Earth told Brahmadeva, who was surrounded by other deities, about being tortured by asuras. So, on the command of Lord Brahman, gods with their partial existence, Anshas, decided to be born on the earth. Gandharvas and Apsaras also participated in this noble cause, and all the deities went to Narayana. Indra, Lord Indra, urged Narayana to descend with a part that is Ansha of Narayana, and Narayana accepted Indra's request as Palanakarta. The celestials descended from heaven to earth for the destruction of the evil and for the well-being of all the worlds, and essentially to unburden the earth to establish the dharma. To establish the dharma, I will repeat. And this section is called Amshavataranam, which means partial incarnations of the divine and semi-divine as the main characters of the narrative of war. Therefore, the destruction which would unburden the earth is the main purpose or prayojana of the main story of Mahabharata, which is therefore endued with a war-centric narrative. And here we can understand the great battle, the great war was pre-planned. There was a divine planning for this war to be happen. So Bharavatarana was the purpose of the war narrative of Mahabharata. Now let us see what is the purpose of the text of Mahabharata, and that is discussing the Dharma Shastra. There are several didactic passages you can find all over the text which reflect thoughts and views on Dharma. Most of the characters of the main narrative and subordinate stories as well speak about Dharma. The characters can be human beings, gods, semi-divines, birds, serpents, etc. And they all discuss the nature of Dharma at some point of the story. And here I am referring term Dharma as not what we mean today by meaning of just religion, but here Dharma is a very wide concept which includes the law, the code of conduct, order, justice, morality, righteousness, virtue, custom, ritual, and so on. All these shades are integrated in the term Dharma. And in the first adhyaya of the Adi Parvan, Mahabharata itself is called a text which is devoted to Dharma, Dharmyam Samhita. So this is Dharmya Samhita. And another reference you can find, Asmin Arthasya Dharmasya Nikhilena Upadishyate. So Dharma with its all aspects is discussed in the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata's Adi Parvan says so. There is one more beautiful verse in the Adi Parvan. Arthashastram idam punyam, dharma shastram idam param, moksha shastram idam proktam, vyasena amita buddhina. This, the pious treatise of Artha, excellent treatise of Dharma, and treatise of Moksha is told by Vyasa, the illustrious one. So here we get the prayojana of text that is discussing Dharma, and that is why I'm calling the text of Mahabharata as Dharma Shastra, because the text of Mahabharata itself says so. So this was the prayojana of text. So now we get two prayojanas for two aspects. So discussing Dharma is the prayojana of text, and Bharavatarana is prayojana or motive of the war narrative. So today we are going to discuss the role of Draupadi as nayaka for attainment of both the prayojanas of Bharavatarana and establishing the Dharma Shastra. And let's begin with the story of birth of Draupadi. Her significance in the thread of destruction and Bharavatarana is well established in the story of her birth. And I'm sure all of you are aware that she was born of the sacrificial fire, that is Yajna Agni. And at that time, there was a divine voice which says this verse, Akashvani, Tam chapi jatam sushronim, vaguvacha asharirini, sarvayoshidvara Krishna, kshayam kshatram ninishati, surakaryam iyam kale, karishrati sumathyama, asyaha hetuhu kshatriyana, mahad utspatsati bhaya. Now, kindly note these two verses, because these two verses, they hint at the prayojana of Bharavatarana and role of Draupadi in that attainment of that prayojana. So the meaning of these verses is, supreme among the women, this beautiful woman of dark complexion, Krishna, will bring about the destruction. Kshayam kshatram ninishati. So she will bring about the destruction of Kshatriyas, and from her will arise terrible fear. Asyaha hetuhu kshatriyana mahat utspasyate bhaya. So from her will arise terrible fear among the Kshatriyas, but she will attain or she will accomplish the Surakarya, the divine planning or the plan of deities will be accomplished through Draupadi. So this was the prayojana of Draupadi's birth. So after discussing these three prayojana, let us go ahead. In this particular episode of the birth story of Draupadi, we get a few references to the past births of Draupadi. She is called Lakshmi and also Lakshmi of Swarga, Swarga Shrihi. As we are discussing these episodes with reference to the critical edition of Mahabharata, I must share this with you in appendix or the extra passages given in the appendix of critical edition. There too, there are some important stories about Draupadi. But in this lecture, we are of course concerned with constituted text of Mahabharata, the main text. But it is noteworthy to study this incidents with reference to passages from, additional passages from Appendix 2. I just wanted to mention this for the sake of study. Okay, so this was Draupadi's birth and the hint of destruction. Let us move to the next episode of Swayambhara of Draupadi. At the Swayambhara, Arjuna, who was in disguise of Brahmana, won the challenge set for Swayambhara. The story is well known, so I'm not going to discuss all the details. And here I would like to compare a popular belief regarding Draupadi and Karna with critical edition. Draupadi is said to have refused to marry a man like Karna, who was known to be Sutaputra because of his caste. However, this is never mentioned in the constituted text of the critical edition. And that is why I'm saying that the study which is based on critical edition is very important to understand the essence of Mahabharata study. There is a just mention of Karna being present at the Swayambhara with Duryodhana in that Swayambhara's episode. And let me tell you here one more thing. These interesting or attractive episodes like the one of milk made by his mother for Ashwathama from rice flour due to this poverty and non-affordability never occur in the main text. As similar as the Karna and Draupadi Samvada of Swayambhara and Draupadi refused Karna. This is not mentioned in critical edition. And even about Drona's putra, that is Ashwathama, Drona, in fact, is mentioned of donating heavily to celebrate Ashwathama's birth, which shows he was rich. Milk episode does not exist in the constituted text like the episode of Karna's insult by Draupadi. So it is really essential to study all these episodes with the reference or with the textual references. Anyways, so let's go back to the kingdom of Drupada for Swayambhara episode. When Arjuna, who was in disguise of Brahmana, won the challenge set for Swayambhara, all the Kshatriya kings were angry due to this, and it led to a battle after Swayambhara. Arjuna and Bhim defeated all those kings and set out to meet Kunti. When Pandavas come to Kunti after winning the challenge at the Swayambhara, Arjuna says to his mother, "Mother, look what ants we found today." And not seeing what he was talking about, Kunti replies, "You share it together." As a result, Draupadi was married to all the five Pandavas. This is a very well-known incident. But at this point, the text provides many discussions and explanation to the reason of polyandry. Story of Draupadi's birth, she is called Lakshmi, Shri, Svarga Shri, and the story of five Indras who were born as five Pandavas as a punishment given by Lord Shiva. And that is why Draupadi, being a Svarga Shri, feminine energy of Indra, she married five men or five Pandavas. Even Vyasa comes and again narrates the past birth of Draupadi to Drupada, her father. Repetition of the story of past birth of Draupadi reflects the emphasis on establishing the fact that the marriage was lawful in accordance with Dharma. And thus, after the lawful marriage, they return to Hastinapura. As I mentioned, Dharma is very important, and that is why many episodes, or you can say almost all the episodes, are discussed with reference to the Dharma. Anyway, so after their marriage, Drona and Bhishma advise Dhritarashtra about the partition of kingdom. Dhritarashtra receives Pandavas and gives them the land of Indraprastha. Here, one point has to be taken into consideration. Pandavas were allied to Drupada and had become stronger after marrying Draupadi, and everybody has that in their mind clearly. Therefore, Draupadi's entry in Pandava's life, or Draupadi's Swayambhara, is a significant episode in many ways for the narrative. Before Lakshagruha, I'm sure you are aware of the episode of Lakshagruha, where there was a conspiracy to burn all five Pandavas in the house made of lac. So before Lakshagruha episode, nobody talks of partition. But after the wedding, Duryodhana too doesn't try to kill Pandavas. After alliance with Panchalas, Pandavas get a huge backing, and so conspiracies get subdued and people start talking of partition. So they are not killed or tricked again. So this is again the significance of marrying Draupadi. Later on, Duryodhana suggests that since Pandavas have become more powerful for war, he says, let us try and make the Pandavas fight against each other due to Draupadi. However, this plan fails at origin as everyone, including Karna, opposes this idea, and here Karna actually praises Draupadi as a great woman. And Swayambhara is hence an important happening because the situation of Pandavas start changing thereafter. After this episode, in the Upaparvan of Rajya Labha, Pandavas along with Draupadi established their kingdom in Indraprastha with Vyasa's guidance. Once Narada comes to Indraprastha at that juncture, and here I would like to say that whenever Narada or Vyasa enters in the story, it always has certain motive and indicates some pertinent future events and guide the characters accordingly. So Narada meets Pandavas and narrates the story of two brothers, demons, Sunda and Upasunda, who fought against each other for a woman and killed each other. So Narada warns Pandavas against strife over Draupadi. After this episode, there were some rules that were set among Pandavas and Draupadi. In the due course of time, Draupadi had five sons, namely Prativindhya, Sutasoma, Shrutakirti, Shatanika, and Shrutakarman. At this juncture, the Pandavas were enjoying their kingdom and were rejoicing with their family. The Khandava Prastha or Indraprastha was made for Pandavas after the episode of Khandavadaha, burning the forest of Khandavas and battle against Indra. Then Pandavas decided to perform a Rajasuya Yajna. They attained the Digvijaya and commenced the Yajna. This episode of Rajasuya is again crucially significant for the thread of destruction of the narrative, the attainment of Bharavatarana, and this episode works as the background of Draupadi's insult in Dyutasabha. So let us discuss this episode in a very brief manner. The episode after Rajasuya are popularly known, but the critical edition helps us to understand several lesser known facts and details of this well-known part. I just don't want to miss anything while discussing this particular episode of Duryodhana's visit to Mayasabha, because after Rajasuya Yajna, Duryodhana visited the palace of Pandavas and the assembly, which is called Mayasabha, and the next episode of Game of Dice took place. Here, the chronology is very important. what happened between these two episodes, Duryodhana's visit and Draupadi's insult. So let us begin with the Mayasabha. Talking of the Mayasabha incident, wherein Duryodhana slipped and fell, it is a well-known story. He slipped and fell and faced public disgrace. It is often said, and it is popularly known, that Draupadi laughed at Duryodhana's fall. As a result, when the incident of gambling took place later, he took revenge on Draupadi. Incidentally, this description is not found, again, not found in the critical edition of Mahabharata. Thinking logically, a noble lady like Draupadi cannot be imagined saying something such as blind son of a blind man, andhe ka putra andha, as it is popularly known, to her brother-in-law in order to mock him. Besides, the writing style of Mahabharata is not in accordance either. So thinking logically, I had never believed this story to be true. When I studied the actual text, when this incident on the mentioned in the text of Mahabharata, that Bhima laughs at Duryodhana loudly. And Bhima and Duryodhana have been competitors right from their childhood, and there was always a rivalry between the two. Duryodhana had even tried to poison Bhima. So Bhima laughing at his brother is totally understandable. Again later, when there is a description of Duryodhana banging his head on a wall, Nakula, Sahadeva, Arjuna, all of them they laugh at him. In this incident too, it is just mentioned that Draupadi, along with her maids, was present there at that time. And there is no mention anywhere in the critical edition of Draupadi saying something to him or laughing loudly at him. Another interesting point here is when Duryodhana is returning back to Hastinapura, it is clearly mentioned that he is tremendously jealous of Pandava's wealth and riches. He cannot tolerate their prosperity. Shakuni notices this, and in the dialogue that follows, Duryodhana open ups, and he cannot tolerate the riches of Pandavas. Their abundant wealth troubles him terribly, and hence they start making a plot to loot all the wealth of the Pandavas. Dhritarashtra is always known to be blind in his son's love, and Duryodhana narrates to his father the incident of how he was dishonored. Duryodhana tells him that Draupadi laughed at me along with her maids, and this has pained me immensely. However, the actual mention in the text in the previous adhyaya is just of Draupadi's presence. Some parts may be missing, but in the edition available, there is no mention of Draupadi laughing at Duryodhana at all. Duryodhana has exaggerated in his narration to underline the severity of his disgrace. When the incident occurred, Krishna's presence hasn't been mentioned, but Duryodhana in his narration tells Dhritarashtra that Krishna too laughed at him loudly. I think the text suggests that Duryodhana wanted to kindle anger in Dhritarashtra's mind so that he would permit the game of gamble. As a result, the incident in the court occurs. I felt like sharing all this because all of you know what happened in the court. Everybody is aware of it. I just wanted to tell the background that as per the critical edition, Draupadi actually had never laughed as we are told. This is a political stance done for achieving wealth and power. It is a cunning craft that is going to result in destruction. Besides, Dharma Shastra also is explained through all these parallel narratives. We are studying all of this simultaneously. In all of these points, the common thread that runs is that of the great heroine, her behavior, her words, injustice that she has suffered, all get linked up as the narrative proceeds. After the court incident, see how Draupadi champions the cause of explanation of Dharma Shastra and the objective of re-establishing Dharma. Sabha Parva is the second Parva of Mahabharata. First is the Adi Parva that talks of the background of Bharavatarana. In this Sabha Parvan, we get seeds of everything that is going to follow in the 16 Parvans ahead. Wars that are going to occur after 13-14 years, their result, and discussion of what is Dharma that gets ignited due to these incidents. So let us see what was the game of dice. And for that, I'm asking you to come along because we have to actually check several references to reach there, to reach the conclusion. So let us see what happens before going to the Dyuta Sabha. The game of gamble has been plotted and Pandavas has been invited to Hastinapura for the same. Dharmaraja loves to gamble, but means Yudhishthira, but he isn't a master of the art. There is a discussion of this fact before the court incident. Dharmaraj Yudhishthira has decided that he will never refuse to any invitation of duta, that is gamble, because it is in accordance with Kshatra Dharma or Dharma Kshatriya. Here, the word dharma has been used. You will realize during this journey of discussion, whatever the incident or happening, everything is related to dharma. Each one has a dharma and it gets manifested in different ways. Not refusing for duta is the Kshatra Dharma of Yudhishthira. The game goes on proceeding. All know how Shakuni keeps cheating and Yudhishthira loses all his assets. His four brothers and himself too. Yudhishthira then says that he has lost everything, but Shakuni counter-argues, reminding of his beautiful and dear wife Panchali. Once Shakuni says this, the verse that immediately follows says that Yudhishthira sets his wife on bed and he loses that round too. But once Draupadi is lost, Shakuni proclaims victory and those words are uttered with full strength, Jitam Maya. Duryodhana immediately declares that Draupadi is now their maid and sends a messenger to tell about this and get her to the court. The messenger, Pratikamin, in a scared tone conveys the message to Draupadi. Draupadi is a thoughtful, knowledgeable lady born in a good family who knows what is dharma. Her first reaction to the news is that is dharma of the Kurus is going to the dooms. And she says that this is not right. Her anger that is expressed in the first verse of her reaction is very meaningful. Usually in other verses, Draupadi refers to Yudhishthira as Raja or Samrat, that is king, or with any other adjective applicable to a warrior. But in this particular verse, she says to the messengers, go immediately to the court and ask the Kitava, that is the gambler, that did he lose himself first or lost me before he lost himself. So she uses the word Kitava. Gachatvam Kitavam Gatva Sabhayam Pruchasu Taja Kim no Purvam Parajaishihi Atmanam Mam Bharata. The word Kitava is politely translated as one who plays duta, but she actually means to address him with a negative connotation of calling him a gambler. Draupadi sends him immediately to ask her question in the court. The messenger is already mutilated by the anger of Draupadi and he has to do the job of conveying the message in the court. He does so. And there is a great discussion in the court which is fruitless. So when Pratikamin goes to the court, meanwhile, Yudhishthira sends his a reliable or trustworthy messenger to Draupadi again. And this part is mentioned in the critical edition, but it is not known, popularly known. The message that Draupadi has sent earlier includes the fact that she is Rajasvala, that is her menstruation being on. She is obeying her Stri Dharma. Menstruation is considered to be a Stri Dharma. See how the word Dharma occurs again and again. She hence is wearing a single garment and hence can't come to the court in that condition. But Yudhishthir sends a message to her through his messenger that please come to the court in whatever condition you are. I do not want here to criticize Yudhishthira, nor I am presenting a feminist view, but I want you to note how dharma goes on changing. However, in spite of the message, Draupadi doesn't come to the court. Then the messenger gets scared and Dushasana goes himself. Dushasana said to her that she should not hesitate to come to Sabha and she should see Duryodhana. He asked her to serve the Kurus because Draupadi was one with accordance to dharma by Kurus, again by dharma. He says, Ehi ehi Panchali jitasi Krushne Duryodhanam pasya vimukta lajja Kurun bhajasva ayata padmanetre dharmena labdhasi sabham paraihi. Draupadi implores to him, rebukes him, and tries in every way to prevent him from taking her to the court. But he does not budge and pulling her by her hair, he drags Draupadi to court. This description is so horrible that it is really painful to read it. After this, Draupadi is described to be in tears and her clothes are in disorder due to the pulling. She is in a weak physical condition due to menstruation, and this disgrace adds to her humiliation, and she is literally shivering with agony and anger. प्रकीर्णकेशी पतितार्धवस्त्रा दुःशासनेन व्यवधूयमाना ह्रीमत्यमर्षेण च दह्यमाना शनैरिदं वाक्यमुवाच कृष्ण. Draupadi looks at everyone and also at her 5 husbands. Her look is such that Pandavas didn't feel more humiliated even after any defeat in war. This is given in the description. When she comes there, she questions there how this is lawful and in accordance to Dharma. He who has lost himself cannot put her to bed. Bhishma is present there. Bhishma, who is known as Devavrata, Dhruvavrata, who has left all pleasures and temptations in order to fulfill his vow. However, Bhishma tells her that though her argument is right, Bhishma says that Dharma is very profound and has a serious tempo. So it cannot be analyzed in haste. Though you are right, dear Draupadi, Yudhishthira, having authority over you as his wife, is also in accordance with Dharma. So Draupadi, you ask Yudhishthira. This discussion goes on for a long time, and so Karna intervenes and presents his interpretations of Dharma. Karna says that Draupadi, having married 5 men, is a bandhaki. The word bandhaki is also translated as a whore. Those women kept imprisoned in a household but who don't have the status of wife are called bandhaki. Karna refers to Draupadi in a very disgraceful way, saying that she being no less than a whore, it doesn't matter whether she is Rajasvala or Ekavastra. This is not adharma. Dushasana also says before that to Draupadi that your husband has put you to bed and lost you, which means that we have won you in accordance to Dharma. Dharmena jitasi. Duryodhana also reinforces this. He says to Draupadi, let your husband, rather any one of your husbands, say that they don't have authority over you. If they say that they cannot put you on bed, I will release you. This was by Duryodhana. But none of the husbands utter a word. Everybody was like muted. Bhima is the only one who gets enraged. You all know about this, and says that even hardcore gamblers do not put even the whores in their house, bandhakis, on a bed. They are kind even to them, and this is the only one, means Yudhishthira is only one who does this to his own wife. So Bhima gets up to burn those hands with which Yudhishthira sets Draupadi on the bed. But Arjuna consoles him, saying that our brother had just followed his Kshatra Dharma, again Dharma. Bhima thanks him for reminding of this fact, or else he would have burned his brother's hand. And all this keeps on happening, and Draupadi does not get her answer. In the meanwhile, on Karna's saying that Pandavas are their servants now, and so they should shed their robes, at that moment, Pandavas shed off their upper garment. Karna immediately says that Draupadi is a maid too, and so she too must be declothed or disrobed. Here, Vastra Harana, this word is commonly used to describe this incident. But in the critical edition, word Karshana has been used, not Harana. And scholars say that it means cloths were pulled or tugged at and not removed. This goes on being discussed by scholars with the help of references. But I feel, let us see at least in this lecture what is actually beyond all this. It is about being insulted and not being pulled or tugged. While declothing, Dushasana pulls Draupadi again and again. Draupadi falls down. The part of miracle, that is chamatkara, is a bit less in the critical edition. When Dushasana tries to pull Draupadi's clothes, there is a verse in the critical edition that says that the same colored apparel that she is wearing goes on appearing again and again as he keeps pulling, and she never gets declothed. Akrushamane vasane Draupadyastu vishampate tatrupam aparam vastram pradurasid anekashaha. Draupadi calling Krishna, he provide her clothes magically, is not mentioned in the critical edition, but this is mentioned in the star parts below the actual text. One thing is definite, that something amazing definitely happened. Draupadi's clothes went on reappearing thereby, showing that Dharma was in favor of Draupadi. So I would say Draupadi was protected by Dharma. The injustice that the Kauravas want to do with her, it couldn't happen. Then there is a description of Dushasana pulling Draupadi again and falling down. Just give a thought. Draupadi is a queen and she is being pulled there and brought to such disgrace by the horrible act of trying to snatch away her clothes. After all of this, her argument is worth listening to. Draupadi implores to all the elders and wise men that why are all of them silent? Where is Dharma? She says, Dhigastu nashta kharu bharatanam dharmas tatha kshatra vidam churuttam. So fie on the dharma and success of Kshatriyas. She has already said this before, but when she says it again after rising up after her fall, it is very extraordinarily remarkable. That is where we understand how eligible Draupadi is to become the queen. The verses through which she expresses are worth being presented here. Draupadi gets up and says that, I have failed to perform one of my important duties. I should have greeted all the elders here, but since Dushasana had pulled my hand, I could not do so. So please don't get angry with me for this and accept my greetings now. Just think, after all that has happened to her, before expressing her mind, the beginning is with this word. One verse of 2 lines rebuffs the elders there while bowing before them. Draupadi honors them on the background of her dishonor. And then Draupadi argues her stand with great power and conviction. She proclaims that she is free. She is not a maid, Dushasana, but then pulls her for the third time. While all this is going on, Bhishma again expresses how helpless he is and says that Dharma is very difficult to know. Vikarna is the only one who takes her side, as you all know. But Karna stopped Vikarna and says again that Draupadi is won by Dharma. Then Duryodhana shows her his thigh and says that she can choose any one of the 100 Kauravas as her husband because her husbands were of no use of them, means Pandavas. Such a level of disgrace and dishonor is going on. And then finally, Arjuna tries to take Draupadi's side in a meek way. Arjuna asks a question. If Dharmaraj Yudhishthira has lost himself, does he remain anyone's master? Arjuna means to say that Yudhishthira has no right over Draupadi as he is no more a master himself. After listening to these words of Arjuna, Vidura, who had been repeatedly meditating, again asked Dhritarashtra to look into the matter. Bhima till then had pledged to kill some of them. Listening to all this, Dhritarashtra says to Draupadi that he had granted permission for Dutta as just a game, but it had reached horrible consequences. Dhritarashtra asks forgiveness and asks her to ask some boons. Draupadi could have asked for anything then, but she asks for only 2 boons, as you know, freedom for Yudhishthira and freedom for rest of the Pandavas along with their weapons and chariots. If we observe this whole episode, 12 to 13 people voice out their opinions distinctly, and all of them mention Dharma in their opinions. Dushasana says that they had won Draupadi by Dharma. Shakuniya agrees with him, and so does Duryodhana reinforce the fact. Vikarna expresses Dharma in a different manner. He says that whatever is going is Adharma. Draupadi has not been won. She is independent. Arjuna, while consoling Bhima, reminds him of Kshatriya Dharma. But Bhima is also aware of his Dharma as Draupadi's husband, and hence he must protect her. In this entire episode, we can say that the only one who is standing by Dharma is Draupadi. And so she keeps on questioning again and again. Vidura has been talking of Dharma throughout the incident. We can see here that though Vidura and Vikarna know what is Dharma, they have no say because they are not in power. Duryodhana, on the other hand, has his way because he has power. Dushasana gets away with his misdoings and is not even punished then because he has power. We can see how dharma is being manipulated and misinterpreted by those who were in power at that time. This underlines the need of re-establishment of dharma, as it is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata, that the Lord will reincarnate when dharma is deteriorating, and then will be a need to redefine and re-establish dharma. The need of re-establishment of dharma is highlighted through this incident, Dharma Glani. Draupadi, through her questions, is exposing this sorry state of dharma, Dharma Glani, and lacuna in it. The entire episode of Draupadi's insult, which was being justified by referring to dharma, should be considered as the Glani of dharma. And I would like to add here that truly, people in that Kuru Sabha, there were some of them like Dhritarashtra were Janmandha. In Kuru Sabha, people were Dharmandha also, that because they were blind towards dharma, they did not know how to look at and interpret dharma. The time to show what is dharma and time to redefine and explain dharma had arrived, and the court incident is very crucial in highlighting this need. And here, Draupadi acts like a dharmanishta person, Dharmanayika, one who protects dharma, who follows dharma and takes ahead the epistles of dharma. And at this time, the stand that Draupadi takes, the questions that she raises, the pledges that people take due to her, all are responsible for taking dharma ahead. And I would like to mention one more point. We always like to discuss relevance. One could summarize this incident saying that women were tortured in the past and they are tortured today too. But in my opinion, this incident should not be looked at only as an incident of torturing women. Draupadi expresses the concept of agency and ownership. She has not left her authority over her own self. If the other Pandavas had taken this stand when Yudhishthira put them on bed, the incident that followed would have never taken place. But it is only Draupadi who underlines this. She is the only one who has this power and boldness to say that she cannot be made anybody's servant until she feels so. Draupadi had chosen 5 husbands by her choice. It is in accordance with Dharma. She has her own agency and ownership. Every decision that she makes underlines this stance. Deeds of only those people get highlighted who have independence, and Draupadi is just like them. They are not just independent, but people like Draupadi, they have the guts to fight for it and proclaim it. Had Draupadi accepted servility or stayed as Duryodhana's wife, all the humiliation that followed would not have happened. But I think this thought is also scary. We cannot even think like this. She would not have been insulted so. But though true, it is hard to accept that accepting to serve the Kauravas would have stopped all the future events. But Draupadi refused to do that. She has kept her authority with herself. She has kept the ownership of her dharma too. And due to Draupadi's stand, she shows how dharma had been uprooted. And this is the beginning of Dharma Yuddha, which was commenced for dharma. After the court incident, Draupadi freed herself and the Pandavas too. And again, there is an episode named Anudyuta Parvan, the second game of dice. This time, there is only one condition, only one stake. He who loses will go for exile for 12 years, followed by 1 year of anonymity, Ajnatavasa. And if anonymity breaks, the entire punishment would repeat again. Yudhishthira knows this very well, but he was aware that he is going to lose this stake again. But due to his pledge and Kshatra Dharma, he opted for playing the game. And Yudhishthira loses everything again. When they set off for exile, descriptions given are very significant. The bold Draupadi, who has tried so much for their freedom, feels helpless, and she is still in the same single clothing, stained and mutilated. Draupadi, a queen who had been staying in palaces where even wind could not touch her, she was walking in an exposed and mutilated condition. in front of all the people in Hastinapura. She cannot bear this disgrace and she's crying and hides her face with her hair. Her agony is evident. Draupadi perhaps does not have the right to even express her grief. She, being beautiful, knows that accepting the situation is the only choice before her rather than doing something against it or weeping the tears. And it is shown in the next incident. Because when they are going away in such a fashion, Dushasana with his brothers come there and laugh at them loudly, mock them. Dushasana insults Bhima by calling him a bull, Gauhu Gauhu, and dancing around him in front of Draupadi. Dushasana also says to Draupadi again that all of her husbands are completely penniless, and how would a delicate, beautiful lady like Draupadi live with them in forest? Dushasana calls her husband important, Napumsakas, and asks Draupadi to choose any one of Kauravas as her husband and live with them happily. It is beyond my imagination how many times that lady with self-respect must have felt to be asked this repeatedly by men looking at her lustfully, making indecent proposals. As a result, weeping Draupadi retorts again with anger and says that 13 years later, all Kuru ladies would be in a condition like her. They would cry over their dead husbands and be standing in blood-stained clothes in public displays. And she says, Yatkrute aham imam prapta tesham varshe chaturdashe hatapatya hatasuta hatabandhu janapriyaha bandhu shonita digdhangyaha mukta kesho rajasvalaha evam krutodaka pravikshanti gajabhaya. This is Draupadi's determination, and perhaps she is reminded of the objective of her birth unknowingly. Her curse is a truth that she foretells, and several things that happen underline the truth of her statement. Bhima pledges to drink blood from Dushasana's heart, whose dirty hands had pulled Draupadi. Arjuna pledges to kill Karna and other people. And they set out for forest. Pandavas go to exile with Draupadi. And there is a discussion about choosing a forest for their dwelling. Then Krishna comes to meet them. Draupadi's words at that time are very precious. A significant thing that needs to be mentioned here is that Draupadi has described the painful dishonor she experienced only 3 times in the text. Never has she been described to lament over it again and again. You take it, some characters like Kunti, Gandhari, Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, some people from Kuru family, Dhritarashtra, they talk about her insult repeatedly, but Draupadi herself mentions the incident only when she wishes to instigate her listeners, never otherwise. This is very important. She uses it only to achieve the destined objectives. People of superior quality never desert their objectives, and Draupadi falls in this category. Prarabdham uttama janaha na parityajanti. However, when Krishna comes to meet them, Draupadi cannot resist venting out her anguish. She questions all the positive things in her life. What was the use of being born from a yajna, of Drupada being her father, whereas Drushtadumna being her brother, having 5 husbands as worthy as the Pandavas, and Krishna being her soulmate? In spite of all these things, Draupadi had to face the terrible insult. She has literally ridiculed Bhima's prowess and Arjuna's mastery in archery in this dialogue. She says, Dhikbalam Bhirma Senasya Dhik Parthasya Dhanushmata. After listening to her, Krishna assures her that things won't be the same anymore, and this insult deserves revenge. Whatever happened to her was very bad, immoral, anti-dharma, adharma, and the doers would surely have to pay for it. So this was promised by Krishna, and when they were dwelling in forest, everything was going well. There were some Brahmanas and Yudhishthira with Draupadi and Pandavas used to feed them. So one day, Draupadi started, or she initiates a discussion with Yudhishthira, because nobody was in hurry, or because everybody was very silent and living very in a very calm fashion, that Vanavasa. So she gets into a debate with Yudhishthira, and she asks Yudhishthira, how can he forget what was the condition of Pandavas in Yuddha that he was made a slave. His brave brothers were reduced to eating just roots and fruits in forests, and his wife was insulted so terribly. So Yudhishthira again tries to show her reason and tell Draupadi that she shouldn't be angry with God or Dharma. Draupadi replies to this argument is very impressive. She says to Yudhishthira, I don't blame God and I don't blame Dharma too. But she says that a Kshatriya king should know when Teja, valor, should be exhibited and when Kshama, forgiveness, should be granted. And Yudhishthira should have that discretion. And here, Bhima supports Draupadi, and again Vyasa visits them at this point. He too supports Draupadi. Vyasa says that war is must, and Arjuna should procure divine weapons for that by going to heaven. And here, Vyasa refers to Draupadi very aptly by saying Dharmacharini, one who follows proper code of conduct. We have heard of the word Sahadharmacharini as the lady who stands by her husband in thick and thin. But here, Vyasa calls her Dharmacharini because she not only fulfills her duty towards her husband, but she herself knows what is Dharma. She knows her own Dharma, Swadharma, people's Dharma, and society's Dharma too. She knows the proper code of conduct, and all this happens in Aranya Parva. I will take 5 to 10 minutes more. In Virata Parvan, she stays at Sairandri. She is a queen by disposition. She's Samradni in her mind. So she doesn't let anything wrong happen to her. She lays down two conditions before the queen of Virata, that she won't wash anyone's feet, nor would she eat anyone's remain. But one day, Kichaka's lustful eyes fall on her when she poses as Sairandri. I would like to narrate an incident here that talks about her courage and valor too. I think valor is not just fighting on the battlefield. It is the bearing that gives you strength and confidence to face challenges in life and meet your objectives somewhat may. All of these characteristics are seen in Draupadi. You know that Kichaka gets killed at the hands of Bhima. But do you know what happened after Kichaka Vadha? There is a part that follows which is known as Anukichaka. These are Kichaka's followers or perhaps people from his lineage. There are 100 such Anukichakas. They get enraged at as a death of Kichaka. And there again, 100 mighty men, the description makes us sweat. They drag Draupadi to the cremation ground, Smashana, in Virata's kingdom to kill Draupadi. All along the way, Draupadi keeps screaming, but never ever she mentions the real names of her 5 husbands, Pandavas, in spite of all the anguish. She bears all the pain because if their identity would get revealed, Pandavas would be revealed, they would have to go for exile for another 12 years, which meant postponement of the war and thereby destruction of her defaulters. Thinking of all this, she bears all the torture. Then though Bhima was also following her, and secretly, once they reach a deserted area, Bhima kills all the 100 Anukichakas and rescues Draupadi. Even before all this, Jayadratha he had tried to kidnap Draupadi. Each time, in spite of being a queen, such things keep happening to her, which should never happen to anyone. Each time Draupadi bears it. The courage that she shows after all such incidents is exemplary and one can learn a lot from it. She keeps on instigating others repeatedly. There are many such incidents, but I would like to conclude with the post-battle episode because this is very lesser known fact. We all know about the episode of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama killed all the people from Panchala camp, that is Draupadi's father's camp, and Draupadi's 5 sons when they were asleep in Sautika Parvan. So when Draupadi got to know about this incident, she was very angry. Again, Yudhishthira tried to calm her down and says that she should not lose her temper. But Draupadi said, this is sheer adharma. and Ashwathama should be punished. Again, Yudhishthira tries to convince Draupadi by saying that it is really difficult to find because Ashwatthama has already left the battlefield and camp, and it is literally impossible to punish him. Hearing this, Draupadi says that she would take up praya, which means not consuming food and water till she dies. She would do so until she gets the news of Ashwatthama being rightfully punished, as he has seriously trampled upon Dharma and deserves punishment. And after Draupadi declared so, she again says some words to Bhima and inspires Bhima to go and catch Ashwatthama. And Bhima did so. And then there is again many descriptions about that episode of Bhima catching Ashwatthama, that Ashwatthama, then Krishna and Arjuna also followed them. But finally, Arjuna got the Ratna, which was carried by Ashwatthama on his forehead, that is Kirita, on his Kirita. So here we should think about the policy of Draupadi, because one may think that how this lady is thinking. She has lost her 5 sons, and how could she demand such things that Ashwatthama's jewel should be with her? But when Arjuna came up with that Ashwatthama's jewel and Draupadi got to know that Ashwatthama is punished, she said, even I respect Ashwatthama a lot as a son of preceptor. He was Acharya Putra, he was son of Drona. But she said that the entire war was fought for establishment of Dharma, and it should not end with adharma by Ashwatthama. A sin has to be punished. And secondly, she says that that jewel of Ashwatthama was very precious, and it is said one who possesses that jewel will never see a defeat. And she says when Yudhishthira would become the king again, he should have that bead embedded in his crown, and it is done so. So this is a presence of mind and sense of propriety. So throughout the text, Draupadi has always been a Dharmanayika till the Svargarohana incident of ascending to heaven. And to conclude, I would say, we have discussed many incidents regarding Draupadi, and we have also discussed how she was troubled due to her beauty. But when it comes to Draupadi, it was not just her bodily beauty, but it is beauty beyond the physical body. It's characteristics that are important. Beauty is much more, it is beyond the physical beauty, and it is completely applicable to Draupadi. Do you know what Karna said after the Dyuta Sabha? He said in a verse that when Draupadi frees Pandavas, Karna says, we have seen several beautiful women, but not like Draupadi. In an awkward and insulting situation in the court, when both Kauravas and Pandavas are enraged, Draupadi pacified everyone and very tactfully freed Pandavas, like a ship that saves those who are drowning. This was Karna's words. Draupadi saves the Pandavas. And I strongly feel that Draupadi's beauty is not just skin deep. Her doings are of far more prominence, and perhaps that also could be another point of great attraction for everyone. With all her grace, her beauty, her knowledge, her decisions and choices, Draupadi was devoted to her dharma, accomplished her journey of dharma and with dharma, and never abandoned her dharma in every sphere in any situation, like come what may. On the other hand, she always inspired others to be devoted to the dharma, and therefore Draupadi is Dharmanayika. We all know the beginning of Mahabharata, that is Narayana Namaskritya and Vaisampayana Uvaca. But do you know what are the concluding verses of the critical edition of Mahabharata? The last order or Adesha by Vedavyasa, and the verse says, न जातु कामान न भयात न लोभात धर्मम त्यजेत जीवितस्यापि हेतुः नित्यो धर्म सुख दुखे तु अनित्ये जीवो नित्यो हेतु रस्य तु अनित्यः. One should never give up the dharma for the sake of kama, desire, fear, greed, and even for the sake of saving one's own life, because dharma is eternal. Happiness and sorrows are transient. The jiva is eternal, but its reason is transient. I think testimony of this preaching and order is Draupadi, the Dharmanayika. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Gauriji. Thank you so much for so beautifully explaining in detail the different aspects from Draupadi's life, and in fact, painting that beautiful image of Dharmanayika Draupadi in all our hearts as well. Thank you so much. Maybe we can take one or two questions if possible, Ji.
Yes.
Yeah, if anyone has any question, please shoot.
Miss, I am Pramod Sridharan. It was very heartening that you have shown the bold face of Draupadi. So it is true that I also strongly feel that she is also a representative or an avatar of Tripura Sundari Devi. The Tripura Sundari Devi from whom she even their finger. So, so Draupadi has shown that great power, that mental power, which classifies her to be called as Durga. So, Miss, one question which I would like to ask is that where the place where Draupadi attained Samadhi, do you have any idea about that?
No, I would say that finding geographical details or those particular regions where the exact things were happened, it is really, I would say, it is almost impossible. If you consider the textual references, yes, we have some stories, some loka kathas, folklores, we can say, which can tell you some details. But as I said, I am concerned with the textual references, the critical edition of Mahabharata. It is not mentioned in the text of Mahabharata, where she was fallen on the road of Swargarohana. But you can refer to some folklores or some temples and those stories. But critical edition doesn't comment anything on this particular aspect.
Okay, Miss, thank you very much. One more question which I had was that I heard that Mahabharata was in 3 versions. The first version called Jaya of 8,800 verses. The second of Vaisampayana, 24,000 verses. And the third one told in the Naimisha forest of 1 lakh verses.
Yes.
So what is your opinion on that?
Okay, so a very pertinent question, and I always like to answer this question. Though I or any other scholar won't give any, or we are not able to give any sizable or specific answers to this question. Okay, so when it comes to the text of Adi Parvan, in Adi Parvan you can find the references to occurrence of this verse Jaya Bharata. So in the very beginning verse, Narayana Namaskritya Tato Jayam Udire. So Jaya is mentioned there. Yes. Okay. Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So Jaya is mentioned in the Adi Parvan, and even Jaya Bharata and Mahabharata, you can find some mentions in text of Adi Parvan of Mahabharata, but it is really impossible to decide which 8,000 verses are to be considered as a part of Jaya, and what are the verses which should be called Bharata, and what is Mahabharata. There are some scholars who put their effort to do so. There are some Western scholars too. And if you read the book named On the Meaning of Mahabharata by Suptankarji, you can find such discussions. But I don't think that we can tell you that being students, I won't say scholar, but being a student of Mahabharata, I cannot claim that this particular portion is called Jaya, this particular portion is called Bharata, and then it was developed as Mahabharata. So I would suggest that instead of going to all these details, we can concentrate on what we have today before us. So we have critical edition, which is carried out after very rigorous textual criticism and very rigorous efforts and studies. And in critical edition, we have around 78,000 verses. And I think we can consider that text as the Mahabharata.
If any others have any questions?
Namaste, ma'am.
Namaste.
How do we understand Draupadi as Swargasri? Because in Mahabharata,
The word Swargashri is
yeah.
mentioned in the text of Mahabharata.
Is it Swargasri or just Sri?
Both.
Both are there.
Sometimes it is called Lakshmi, and even I think in the episode of Vanaprasthashram of elders of Kurus, in the Ashrama Vasika Parvan, it is said that Murtimati Lakshmi. So Draupadi is called as Lakshmi. So many times in text you can find references to Draupadi being called Lakshmi or Gashri.
The confusion.
Narayani, and also Narayani.
Okay. Why I asked was, many people ask, like, because the Pandavas are Indras, how can Draupadi be Lakshmi? It's not
Yes.
as.
If you have heard my talk, I have mentioned one reference. In that particular story, that Pandavas are considered to be the incarnations or of 5 energy sprung from Indra. At that time, she is called Swargashri, means Lakshmi of means feminine energy of Indra, and that is why she married 5 incarnations. So that is the logic.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, anyone else have questions?
So yes, I had the one question.
Yes, sir.
So I was just because we belong to Kerala, we have Swami Shabarimala, Swami Ayyappa's temple having 18 steps. So I was just thinking whether these 18 steps have connection with the 18 parvas of Mahabharata and the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, because 18 is prominently displayed there. 18 chapters, 18 parvas of Mahabharata and 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita. And we also have Shabarimala temple having 18 steps. So I was thinking whether these have some connection. What is your opinion?
If you want to say so, you can interpret like this. But as I said, text doesn't comment like this, right? But there are 2 distinct or different aspects. One is the aspect of study, and one is the aspect of devotion, that is Shraddha. So when it comes to study and belief, sometimes we can join both of them, but sometimes we had to put a demarcation line. So what you are saying, I cannot answer this with reference to textual study, but if you believe in that and you wish to go with that opinion, you can go, because even in textual tradition, we have some significant numbers, and also we can find some characteristics which are considered for each number. So for 3 devas, so you can have 3 prominent deities. Then also there are Ashtavasus and 11 Rudras. So 18 Parvans of Mahabharata, there are 18 Adhyayas. Even Battle of Kurukshetra, Kuru War, Kauravas Pandavas War, that lasts for 18 days. And again, if you read the Adi Parvan, you can find the Anukramanika Upaparvan, the episode which is actually like a list of content. So at that portion, in that portion also you can find in first Parva, Adi Parva, there are 18 sub-episodes. So in Mahabharata, 18 is a significant number. I'm sure about that. But I cannot say that with the help of textual study, we can relate the number of 18 with the steps of Shabarimalai temple. But if your Shraddha inspires you to think like so, you can think like that. This would be my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think we, within our time limits, we have taken some questions as well. Thank you. Once again, thank you. Thank you.
I would like to say something before we conclude. I would just like to thank you and Shivanandaji for giving me this opportunity, and so that I can share my thoughts and my study with learned people like you. And I also am very happy, and I would like to congratulate you all, to your team and Amrita Vishwavidyapitam for carrying out this great venture or task like Mahabharata Upanayanam. As Indians, this is our responsibility to think more over Mahabharata, to discuss Mahabharata, to spread the message of Mahabharata. So we all are trying our best, and I'm very fortunate that I could get this opportunity to be a part of the venture of Mahabharata Upanayanam. Thank you so much.
Same here, ma'am. Thank you so much. We hope that we can also meet you in person, or maybe we can continue our
Please
collaborative
visit
talks.
Institute and see our critical edition.
Sure, and hopefully we can have another set of session with you as well.
Certainly.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much. I thank all our enthusiastic Mahabharata learners as well who joined us today for the session. Keep learning, keep contemplating on Mahabharata. I also offer my infinite salutations at our Guru, our mother, Sadguru Shri Mata Amrita Devi, who has blessed us with, blessed all of us with this unique opportunity to learn, to understand, and to contemplate on Mahabharata. Once again, thank you all. Thank all of you. Let us wind up the session with Ashanti Mantra. Om Lokah Samastah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukhino Bhavantu. Lokah Samastah Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Namah Shivaya. Thank you.